Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to not another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Diener. I am here for a special announcement. This is the 1 year anniversary of the show, and the past year has been nothing but, oh man, fun. It's been nothing but just a fantastic learning experience jumping into this genre that I am very passionate about. I love podcasts and I love having my own podcast. But I wanted to jump on here for a couple of reasons. One, to say thank you to everybody who's been a listener to the show for the past year. I'm looking forward to what the next year will bring. But I also need to say that this next year is going to look a little bit different. I have decided I'm going to experiment with the format of this show for a number of reasons. Let's start with the very first one. That is time. I start every single one of my episodes by saying that I'm a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer. I'm a professional speaker. I'm a father to 4 kids and a husband to a beautiful wife. I run all those businesses, including the business of my household. I shouldn't say I run the business of my household. My wife does that. She's amazing at that. She's the best. But all of those things are things that I do, and you can imagine that they are very time consuming. I decided a year ago to add podcaster to that list of my jobs, and I do all of it myself. I edit the show, I produce the show, I line up the guests, I wrote the theme song, perform the theme song, run the Patreon, do it all. It's extremely time consuming. And I have found in the last year that in juggling my time, the podcasting has started to take a lot of time away from my other businesses. And I'm finding time away from my family. And to me, as a father being my number one favorite job and most important job, that has become unacceptable to me. So there's a couple of ways that I could deal with that. I could get other people to do things for me, which I've not been able to do, or I can just switch things up. I guess the third option is I could just stop the show entirely, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons is I just literally just got off a interview with somebody who told me that my show has helped them through a lot of tough times this year. This person, I'll just go ahead and say it. His name is David Claire Bennett. What's up, David? Just got off a call with him, and he said this publicly, so I'm okay with sharing it with you guys. David Claire Bennett, who's a voiceover actor, just said to me that my show helped him get through some tough times. He was suicidal and not doing well mentally, but my show was one of the things that helped him through it. Still currently processing that information, but kind of solidifies to me in my mind why I started this show. I knew that when I started this show that the stories that I'm telling with my guests are going to help somebody, because wrestling is life and life is wrestling. So it's not a show that's about wrestling. It's a show that's about life. And if the life lessons that the people I'm talking to can help people in their life overcome whatever it is that they're maybe trying to overcome and conquer, then man, I'm doing the right thing. And I know that that's what my show is doing. So the third option that I was saying in terms of we could just stop doing the show, that's not an option for me. I also really enjoy the process. It's just a time consuming process. So I want to say to all my listeners, all the people that have been following, the supporters of the show, I want you to know that if this is your favorite podcast is not leaving, but your favorite podcast might look a little bit different over the coming weeks. I'm going to experiment. I am a goal setter. And when I started this experiment of this show, I decided I'm going to give myself 1 year. I want to give myself a year and see if I can find the guests, if I can put out the content. We'll see what happens in the year. And man, I became a vice president of a clothing line in that year, all because I started this podcast. Shout out to Rest When Dead Clothing, Aaron York of ceofit.ca and the Reaper Fitness Group. Man, I'm very proud that I made that connection. And man, a lot of stuff wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this podcast. So I don't want to stop doing that, but I am also somebody that's always into trying something new. And it was a new experiment to try to do this podcast. And what I want to do is experiment with some different formats over the next year. So that leaves some things up to you. As listeners, I want to hear from you. I want to know what you might like or not like about the things that I'm doing over the next year. Some of these things might be a little more topical with some of my guests. I think some of the episodes might end up being a little bit shorter, and I might not be able to be as consistent in terms of the content. It might not be weekly. I don't know yet, is what I'm saying, which, I mean, I'm putting out an announcement right now, and part of that announcement is I don't know yet. Maybe not the most professional or well thought out, but man, I just decided I got to put this out there. I made the decision a year ago. I'm just going to say I'm doing a podcast. It's going to force me to do it. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm putting out an announcement saying I'm going to do some new stuff, and this is going to force me to do some new stuff. And what that new stuff looks like, what the time frame is on that new stuff, how that's going to look, I don't know. But I'm excited about it, and I know that I'm going to keep putting out good stuff. And when I'm not able to put out the good stuff, that's, I guess, when that third option comes in where I go, I think maybe now is the time to stop. But I have to find a format and a timeline with my job as a wrestler, a producer, and a speaker that's going to make it possible for me to be a good dad and good husband while I do the show. So I do have a couple of interviews in the can with some exciting friends and guests of mine that are definitely going to be put out. So you are still going to see some things in the previous format, but you are going to see some things that are new as well. So I just want to come on here and tell you guys that. That's one of the reasons why this week you're not going to be getting a typical episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. You're getting me coming on here and talking to you with an really unplanned statement. I'm just talking to you here, and as my authentic self, as the host of the show, wanted to talk to my audience and my listeners and letting you know that definitely for the next few weeks, I'm going to be a dad. I got some vacation planned with my wife and my kids, and taking a breather from the push of the content. But as I do that and regroup and give myself some time to breathe, it will also give me some time to think of various ways of experimenting with this show, because I do know that wrestling is life and life is wrestling. But I will divulge to you now that my life is most important, and that being my life with my wife and with my kids. And that means that some things are going to need to change in terms of the format of this show. If you have some ideas on what you think that should maybe look like, what are some things that you might want to hear from me? What are some, whether that be topics, whether that be, hey, I'd be okay with you just sitting down with somebody for a 10-minute conversation about boom, fill in the blank. Maybe I start doing that too. I don't know. If you got ideas, I love being interactive with you guys, and I appreciate all the feedback that I've gotten. So you can hit me up at Cody Diener, whether that's on X, on Instagram, or on Facebook. I'm also going to be very much listening to what my patrons have to say about this, my very supportive patrons, and what they want to see, because I want to make sure that I'm giving them the quality contents over at patreon.com/Cody Diener. And whatever you guys might want, I want to make sure that I give you. But I do know that whatever I give you, it's going to be a focus on quality over quantity. That's something that I want to make sure that I'm able to do. And I don't want to just keep putting out quantity of content and sacrifice the quality of it. If I maybe need to put out less, but it means that the things that I put out are going to be better. Hey, I've said that wrestling is life is wrestling because of life lessons that we're able to pull out of wrestling are very valuable. And one thing that I've learned in professional wrestling is that less is more. So if I have to put out a little bit of less quantity, I do want to promise you that that means that you're going to be getting more, meaning the quality is going to be just as much, if not better, because of it. So we will know with whatever I give you that still the same lesson will be, as it always is. That's the wrestling is life is wrestling. We'll see you next time.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life is wrestling.